consent.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our xpath.NEXUS LinkedIn Live event. I'm your host, Madalina Andrei, former Global Mobility Coordinator and currently Provider Relationship Manager with xpath.global. For those of you not yet familiar with xpath.global, we are the first SaaS-enabled marketplace, digital ecosystem in the global mobility sector. To put it simply, the first ecosystem that enables the direct relationship between local and regional experts, offering specialized services like migration, visa, tax, social security, or destination services, and corporate clients, on the other hand, in need of those services all around the world. This is our 16th live event from the xpath.NEXUS series, a series which has as main goal to become a place where we can share best practices in our industry, to learn from each other, and most importantly, grow together. This episode focuses on digital nomadism and its impact on global mobility. We had this plan actually and organized as a face-to-face panel for the Worldwide ERC conference in Chicago this autumn. Unfortunately, due to the restrictions in place, we were unable to attend it in person. However, the topic raised a lot of attention and interest, and together with Worldwide ERC, we decided to have it as a separate event, and here we are. The interest initially expressed in this topic was kept at high levels, and the proof is the massive number of attendees to this session, over 700, which is simply amazing. So no pressure at all. Digital nomads, visas, and the remote working policies have changed the landscape for everybody, employee and employers alike. There are currently, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, around 30 possibly countries offering these options, or what is very similar to a digital nomad visa around the world, and many more countries are coming up. So we're going to take a closer look on how these visas can be used within global mobility policy, as well as talent acquisition and retention strategies. We'll be discussing the most important driving factors for the countries offering this type of visas, the benefits of employees seeking to use this option, as well as the implications and opportunities to employers. I'm sure we'll have some great answers and questions in this session, thanks to the valuable insights from our fantastic multidisciplinary expert panel here. Before introducing my guests, I'd like to thank all the attendees for joining and for watching the event. Please feel free to drop your questions and your comments. I'll do my best to cover those as well. And a big thank you to our special guests. I'd like to introduce now my guests alphabetically. So I will start with Diana Buzoianu, the legislator perspective. Diana is a member of the Chamber of Deputies in the Parliament of Romania. She is a member of the Standing Committee for Ecological Balance and Environmental Protection and the Standing Committee for Information Technologies and Communication. She's dedicated to the fight for digitalization. I really love that. And is currently working on various initiatives that will institutionalize digital practices, both in the public and the private sectors. And she's invested in bridging the gap between citizens and the public administration by developing digital infrastructures. Next, we have Matthew Hellrung, the immigration compliance perspective. Matthew is a corporate immigration attorney. He is the managing partner and co-founder of Meltzer Hellrung. Meltzer Hellrung is a US-based full-service corporate immigration law, providing comprehensive solutions for businesses, from entrepreneurs and investors to multinational corporations out there. They're always working with their clients to create innovative solutions for businesses for employing the foreign nationals, providing end-to-end processes that will ensure clients are prepared for all the phases in an immigration process. Then we have Tania Mariottini, the HR and Global Mobility Leader perspective. Tania Mariottini, GMST, is the Director of Global Mobility at Twilio. She has over 15 years of global talent mobility experience working in diverse industries, including over 10 years in leadership roles and international assignments in both Asia and Europe. She was recently recognized by her peers as a Global Mobility Top 100 Most Admired Corporate Professional for 2021. Congratulations, Tania, for that. And she's an advocate for Move for Hunger and is an active participant in their corporate action network. And Simon Word, the human capital management expert perspective. As a global alliance manager for Element Global Services, Simon's role is to help clients elevate their brand in the field of human capital management. Covering multiple business sectors and having a borderless remit every day is different and challenging, as they happily align themselves with their KPI, with the KPI of their clients. Having ran partner programs for 20 years, the challenges that the pandemic delivered was actually nothing new, and enabling organizations to be nimble and resilient for the future and preparing for the evolution of the marketplace is one of his daily focuses. Thank you very much for joining us. I guess we can start, and we can start with the lawmaker's perspective, Diana. Trying to define who would be the user persona, right? The customer persona of the digital nomad visa, right? Do they have to work in a specific sector? And what would be the most important driving factors for the countries offering this type of visas and the benefits to the employees?
So basically, when I started drafting the law, I started speaking with legislators from around the European Union, trying to figure out what are the main benefits, let's say, and who are those digital nomads. And I stumbled upon a few communities of them. And the thing that struck me, because I started this journey thinking that they will all be in IT at a certain age, and then that's it.
Yeah.
But, what struck me the most was that they are a very diverse group of people, and they come with a lot of different kind of background. What's the common value for them? It's that they value flexibility at work. They value the fact that they can actually add something extra to their extra curricular activities, let's say, because once you can work remotely, I've met with a lot of activists, I've met with a lot of influencers, promoters for some kind of movements, that they tell me that without working remotely, those missions that they fight for outside working hours would not be possible unless they have this. That part of their life would not be possible if they didn't have this. So I would think that the main idea behind it is that this way of living actually bridges like the instruments of the 21st century that we already have and that we can already use in order for them to maximize their experience while still working at full capacity for their employees. That's the common thread. And elsewhere, I think I found the most diverse group of people that I could find.
Okay, so it's very difficult to pinpoint like a user persona.
Yeah.
What about the driving factors for the countries offering this type of visa, Diana? What triggers the implementation of such visas?
So it's certainly one of the aspects is, and I've seen this talking with all the other legislators, it's the resources. You get resources in your country. It's almost always the money that you can bring into your country, and the fact that most of those digital nomads will not actually go to those big cities, to the capitals of the countries that they visit. They will actually want to experience unique experiences. They will go to the gems of that country. So basically what I'm saying is that the local communities will have most to win out of this. And one thing that I've spoken with the Croatian representatives in particular is the fact that this kind of initiative also indirectly brings advantages to the tourism. So it's
to
not
the tourism
only
side.
Digital nomads. While you advertise your country for as a digital nomad, I don't know, heaven for digital nomads, you always get even long-staying tourists here in the country that you promoted this instrument for. So it's an added value that you can get if you market it well and if you use it well.
Thank you.
Deanna, I was going to say, if I could just add too, I think from a corporate perspective, one of the biggest challenges, as you have said, like the technology is there, like the capabilities are there, but one of the biggest challenges is the tax and immigration. And as a corporation, right, I think all of us who are in the mobility or HR industry, we're spending so much more time on compliance. And so I think it's a question a lot of us are asking, and I think, Romania may be leading in some spaces, but what are countries actually doing to change their, in some cases, I don't want to use the word archaic, but to change some of their tax laws and to change some of their immigration laws to actually allow this. And I completely agree with you. I think it's great for the economy. I think there are wins on the personal side as well, but I just wanted to highlight that different countries are in different places. And as a corporation, like that's very challenging for us because the tax laws and the immigration laws may not have actually caught up with the world, I think, in which we live in today around technology.
Yeah, if I can, my work focused on the immigration law, on changing the immigration law. But then once again, I know for a fact that once we have this legislation in place, we will also have to look at the tax law, at the tax legislation. I know that we have international regulations regarding not doubling the taxation, but there are always loopholes, and some countries actually canceled all this topic with the idea that the digital nomads will not be paying taxes, and that's the end of it. They got rid of this problem very simply, very, very simple. But yeah, I know for a fact that we will need, and all of the countries that implemented the digital nomad visas right now will in the future, in the next, I don't know, in the next few years, actually, they will need to change their taxation laws.
Yeah, as Tanya mentioned, I think that's the biggest concern we see with employers with digital nomad visas is one, the ability to be taxed or permanent establishment within the country and immigration. Diana, to your point, I have seen a lot of countries, I think there are over 30 or 35 now, that do have nomad visas that do it to essentially exempt the individual working in country from permanent establishment, which is a jump past the professional employment organization model or the contract model that was sort of happening before the pandemic. I think the digital tools that companies use to work remotely during the pandemic are really going to facilitate even more movement and use of these visas going forward.
Thank you very much for your input. Apparently, LinkedIn is experiencing some connection issues, but we're live anyway on our YouTube channel as well. I'm not sure what's happening with LinkedIn. Hopefully it will be working, but just to announce you. So to get going, we have tried to make a user profile of a digital nomad. We saw that it's almost impossible, right? We know what are the triggers for implementing such visas and the benefits for the employees. Given the sudden global talent pool currently available in the context of working from anywhere or working remotely and digital nomad visas being implemented here and there, Diana, what would be the main challenges for the local state administrations to manage the digital nomad and the remote workers influx? Are there any particular aspects to be considered?
Well, first of all, we've talked about recognizing them legally. That would be the first step to have the legislation in place. But then there's also the idea of digitalizing the administrative public services, right? I mean, when a digital nomad comes, let's say in Romania or in another country, they pretty much use they use digital instruments for pretty much everything. That's their signature, and if they have to go to the public administration to just bring paper after paper after paper for anything they want, that's going to be a very bad sign for them, and they're not going to stay there. I mean, one of the things that we need to do is provide them with platforms where they can upload their documents, make everything online, and not only for them. It's something that we should do for our citizens also. but it's a target that if we don't meet with the digital nomads, they will just go and look to another country.
Yeah,
it's not something we need to be competitive for them in this regard, because they already are used to using these instruments. They're not going to come to a country where they don't have this.
Thank you very much for your input. We're going across the pond to US, to Tanya, and we have to congratulate Tanya for well, Twilio was named to Fortune's 2021 list of 100 best companies to work for. That is really something. Congratulations, Tanya. What would be your superpower as an employer, apart from being among the pioneers of remote work policy or open work, as you call it, inside? What are the other superpowers that you that pushed you to the top?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I think everyone who knows, I'm fairly recent to joining Twilio, but I've just been thrilled. And I know Deanna talked a little bit about flexibility and the importance of flexibility. I will share from my perspective what I think makes Twilio so great, but I think it's really about being your best self. And again, to some of the remote work, open work policy that we have, like that can be in different places and show up in different ways. And I know we'll talk a little bit more later, but I myself am a remote worker and was excited to have the ability to trail with my spouse for his job opportunity.
That's amazing.
So I think those types of things are really important, but also Twilio for me, sustainability, corporate social responsibility, those are really important and like core to our values and who we are as an organization. We have a goal for everyone at the company to give 1% of their earnings to a charity of their choice. So there's a lot of different activities to get involved in your community. So again, I think different things for different people, but for me, that's really important. And then over the last couple of years with everything that was going on, especially in the US, Twilio actually came out as an anti-racist company. I think we're trying to do a lot in the DE&I space and also be a leader. And I love our CEO, Jeff Lawson, has said on many occasions, we've got different metrics and things around that, but it's not to prove that we're diverse, it's to move the needle and make sure that as a company, we're doing the right thing. So I would say like flexibility, work-life balance, we want to create equity in society and equality. And then we really care about the communities that we're in. And we're in so many communities now with allowing remote work and giving back to those communities. So I would say, at least for me, it's been an amazing place to work. And we are a company of builders. And I think that we're a software, communication software platform. And I think you'll see us continue to grow.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We already know that remote work is a benefit that employees want, right? And some companies, of course, advertise it as part of their comp and ben package. This means probably that other companies, other employers who choose not to look into this option might have no access to the talent out there, right? In a labor market which is already shrinking. Generally speaking, would you say that the remote work policy has an impact on employees' application recruitment process? In your case specifically, has this setup improved your employer branding rate? And how can remote working help you win the war for talent? Because it's a war out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so many, and I'm sure you guys have all experienced this as well, but so many people are really interested in the opportunity to work remotely, to live closer to family, to have a different lifestyle, maybe to be more out in the country. And so as they're looking for jobs, I know that is a criteria, right? They're like, hey, is this something your company allows? Will they allow it for this role? And are there any limitations? So I definitely think that it is a differentiator. And I do feel like Twilio, I want to say it was February of like last year, and you can go out in a web browser and look up Twilio open work, that they announced their open work policy. So I think they've been very progressive and leading edge on it. And I think that companies that haven't are going to have to be able to compete, because I do think that the pandemic has really changed the way that we all think about work. I think we all took time to reassess our values. So I do think it is an EVP employer value proposition. I do think it is a differentiator. And I know a lot of, there's so many people that I hear from people all the time that want to work at Twilio, but there's so many people that I think not just because of the remote work are interested in, like you said, Madalina, it's a great company, but I really do think that it's going to be a differentiator. And I think that I just, none of us have a crystal ball, but I think as we go forward, I think that we'll start to see more companies are going to have to embrace that, because if not, they're going to have a very particular type of workforce. One other thing I really wanted to say, which I think is so important, but as you know, the pandemic was detrimentally or impactful to women in the workforce. And I think that one of the ways, again, to create equality is to have, some kind of open work, remote work policy, because I do think it gives more flexibility. And again, which I think is so important. And again, it creates a more diverse talent pool. So again, I really think this is where companies will head. Yes, Simon, I think you have something to say, but we're not everybody's in the same place yet. And I think we're more on the leading edge.
I think I'd add to that, Tanya, definitely. There was a recent survey by Owl Labs that found that US employees would happily take a 5% pay cut in order to work remotely. And this is really promoting benefit packages that aren't exactly salary dependent. It's almost hidden. It's not something that was expected, but it's really this work from anywhere movement that's been driven by the pandemic really is almost exploding. We've certainly seen an increase in inquiries on the basis of that. And working remotely, it is said that employers are less likely to leave their employees if they can work remotely compared to their on-site counterparts. It's a well-known fact.
Yeah. Well, and Madalina, I know you were going to ask this question, but I feel like Simon went there, but I know there's a lot of conversation around compensation. And if someone chooses to work in a lower cost location, like should you adjust their compensation or not? And there is a lot about what I would call pay equity. And I think, because I've heard people say like, oh, the company's trying to be cheap or save money, but actually, the goal of the company is to pay competitively for that market. And some markets are like San Francisco, New York, they're just a lot more expensive. I mean, I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, like it's a really low cost of living area. I don't know that I would expect to be paid a San Francisco rate. Or I would also say, it creates issues with other local people who might have a similar role. But also if you think about the cost of living, if you pay somebody like me in Albuquerque a San Francisco salary, well, that if everybody does that, like then local people here can't afford housing or groceries or things like that. So I think, we think about equality more holistically, and we want to pay people for the job and want to make sure they're, competitively paid. However, there are pros and cons. You get flexibility to work somewhere else, but it may be a lower cost of living area, and we want to pay you competitively for that area. But I know that's a hot topic right now. I'll be curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, and it was one of my questions actually, Tanya, thinking that this is the new catch-22 happening in this remote working scenario, right? Especially on the US market, right, with US employers.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think you just have to balance it. Like, is it, to Simon's point, like if most on the survey that was done, if employees are willing to take a 5% increase or a decrease, to live somewhere else, then, then they can make the choice. Like, is that flexibility worth the lower salary, or would they prefer the higher salary and to be in office or to be at a core location? So I think it again gives employees a lot of choice.
Yeah, because currently, as far as I've read, at least, it creates a lot of dissatisfaction among the employees. Yeah, it's normal.
Yeah, to Madalina's point, there's definitely an exchange of value. If the employee wants to work remotely, if they're willing to take a pay cut, they are getting value from moving closer to family or having more flexibility at home or moving closer to recreational activities that they're interested in. I think you get the same amount of production out of the individual generally, as most studies have shown. So I think it's win-win for both the employee and the employer.
Excellent. Matthew, we learned that remote work policies definitely have great advantages for employers out there. But thinking about US market, right? To hire foreign nationals, US employers seem to go to great length for the person in question to be considered for an employment-based visa. The employer needs to receive various approvals. They need to file special petitions. It seems to be a lot of bureaucratic hassle involved.
It is.
My question would be, how willing are the US employers to hire foreign nationals? And in case they are not that willing, they don't want to get involved because of the said hassle, what options are left for the individuals that might want to work remotely from US, let's say, and how do companies exactly expect to attract the skills and the talents they need? What's your client's experience?
Our experience with our clients generally is that most clients try to avoid immigration until they have to use it. It is an extra cost. It is an extra compliance burden on the company. There are additional vendors that have to be dealt with. But generally, if you're going to be in the technology field, science, technology, engineering, or math, STEM fields, you're going to run into immigration regardless. roughly 50% of US master's degree holders graduating in the United States are foreign nationals or international students. So if you're pulling from that pool, essentially if you're hiring software developers, data scientists, database architects, certain types of engineers, there's going to be a high international student population within your candidates. So we generally see clients focus on immigration positions where they're hard to fill, or there's just a large amount of immigration need within the candidate base that they're seeking. If clients choose to move away from that or not to sponsor, they're simply just cutting themselves off from a large majority of tech talent in the United States right now. So you're going to have to find that elsewhere with nearshoring or perhaps other operational bases around the world that clients may have. But you are disadvantaging yourself, in my opinion, from a talent pool that is very rich in the United States, very skilled. And I'm sure, as Tanya can attest, is a large portion of the tech talent that exists right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. Would you say US might be considering at some point having in place a Nomad or a digital remote worker visa? Aside from that, were there any clients of yours that used or considered using such a visa elsewhere? Would you say, how would you say it helps their business?
I wish the US would consider some type of Nomad visa right now, or at least a more robust guest worker program, which we desperately need, because there are so many positions in the United States right now that are in the middle skill level, I would say, that are going unfilled. And we don't have an immigration function to fill those roles right now, or visas available. That would probably be my want. I don't think that we'll get a worker or Nomad visa. We see most often our clients using these visas outbound to other countries like Mexico, Costa Rica, for executives or special employees. In the future, I think these are going to be really useful to companies in offering flexibility, extra perks for individuals, and honestly taking care of the permanent establishment issues that are caused by employee movement around the world. So no, I wish at some point in the future, I hope so, but right now I don't think we'll see it. We are counseling clients a lot though on employees moving. And I think the biggest compliance component generally to keep track of is where are your employees physically working at all times. That is the number one piece of information that we are trying to encourage everyone to track.
Thanks a lot, Matthew. Well, hiring and employing internationally can be quite complicated, as we can see, but there are solutions such as the services of Elements Global are offering. Simon, you're covering this complexity for your clients and their employees. What would be the main advantages of using the EOR setup for companies?
Thank you. Great question as well. And the main reason people talk to us is speed to market. Companies are expanding internationally. They realize that they don't have an entity in the country they're moving to. And that can take 9 months to a year, even in a very, very simplistic country to move to. We can have them up to speed and up and running within 4 weeks. We also provide them with controllable costs. 9 months of engaging with lawyers in country and going through an immigration process and visa process is extremely costly. And those costs aren't always transparent. It's very, very difficult. We can give them a quantifiable cost straight away. A timeline that they can work with, and allow them to get on with their own day-to-day business. More to the point, we give them a compliant solution and have them up and running within 4 weeks. And that's got huge value worldwide.
Of course,
the digital nomad market, I know, but it also gives them access to a worldwide talent pool as well, which is what we were touching on earlier.
Yeah. What would be the main struggles and the main risks on the client side when considering remote work, Simon?
The big key is to de-risk global expansion. It carries massive risk. You don't know what the costs are going to be. The labor laws will change. And it's about staying compliant in country during that operation and the onboarding of employees, and also the offboarding as well. Setting somebody on in another country is quite easy compared to offboarding in some countries, which can be extremely tricky waters to navigate, depending on what country you're talking about. We provide a full service from cradle to grave with employing that person and letting them go if that's the case may be, and providing them that reassurance that we're de-risking that employment aspect for them.
Thank you, Simon. So EOR is one of the possible solutions available for employers. Switching back to the compliance perspective, and Matthew, are there any specific actions the employers need to take in case employment conditions change? For example, employees working remotely. I'm thinking about a phrase that stuck with me in your legislation, mentioning that, if I'm not mistaken, please correct me, H-1B visa holders being able to work remotely as long as the location is within normal commuting distance, right? So how do you define normal, and what happens if an employee wants to work from another US state or from a different country entirely?
Before the pandemic, that was a bit of a debate. The Department of Labor came out, basically said, and if you're commuting to work in any capacity, you're within normal commuting distance. So even if you're driving 2 hours and on an H-1B visa, for example, which is location specific, you're technically commuting to work. The big issue is then with the pandemic that happened was everybody was sort of commuting or commuting part-time to work, and then remote work happened during the pandemic. And what happens when an individual is no longer commuting to work at all? And in that case, we filed a lot of amendments for a lot of clients. And if an employee wants to move to a separate state or perhaps another country, which is often happening right now, if it's in the United States, we will have to file an amendment to take advantage of the location-specific requirements for H-1Bs and other types of visas. If it's international, we're going to take a look at the PEO solution and consult our clients there and recommend a partner, or potentially look at a Nomad visa if the individual's moving to an area that has one available and exempts them from permanent establishment issues. But it is tricky, and it's changing right now. But luckily, the U.S. government's been a little realistic and thoughtful in expanding the use of what is considered to be a commuting distance, at least for the short term.
Super, Matthew. That normal commuting distance, as well as the main risks, Simon mentioned a bit earlier. I'm getting back to Tanya and the global mobility leader perspective right now. And also Simon mentioned a bit earlier the tracking. No, Matthew mentioned the tracking of your employees, right? How do you keep track of the employees, Tanya, at all times? What would be the policy in place, if you can share these details, of course?
Yeah. No, I'm happy to share what I can. And I would say, just to add on to what Matthew just said as well, I think that it's important as a company, because we do have the open work policy, that we do, by the way, sponsor amendments for people who choose to move to a different state or a different area. So it's just kind of part of how we operate. So interestingly enough, because I knew, Madalina, you were going to ask me this question. So I know there are a lot of tracking tools that exist that are out there. Our talent management function actually owns our open work policy, which I think is brilliant, because they have the overall understanding of attraction, retention, et cetera, engagement. But we don't have a tracking tool. I think they may be looking into something. I'd say, though, part of who we are in our culture, though, is it's really a high trust. One of our values is no shenanigans. I think people hold each other accountable, which is something I really appreciate. And so the policy is clearly posted on our intranet site called Switchboard. So employees, managers are supposed to educate themselves on what is allowable and not allowable, and to operate within those guidelines. And I know one of your follow-on questions is like, surprise, like, do I know, is there maybe somebody out there who has exceeded our threshold that we don't know about? Probably. I think every corporate mobility or corporate HR person you would ask would say, yeah, probably, because, we don't want a big brother. We don't have any plans to track people. It's really self-reporting. We ask employees to work with their managers, to work with their business partners, to work with our team if they're immigration, tax, payroll, et cetera, concerns, because we can help be a liaison and we understand all those pieces. But so we don't have a technology today. Maybe we'll have one in the future as this continues to grow. And we have had, I would say, some of those surprise cases, especially with like the Omicron variant. There's been travel bans that have just come up. And so we've ended up with what I like to call displaced travelers. So their intent was just to go there, let's say for, a few weeks or a month or two, and then all of a sudden they can't get back. Those are the ones, and everyone I think has been really forthcoming to say like, hey, like I'm stuck and now I know I'm going to be outside of policy. What can we do, or what are some of the workarounds? And then
that's an extreme case.
Yeah, with our internal partners.
Super. Thanks a lot, Tanya. Thanks a lot for this input. Getting back to the lawmakers' viewpoint and Diana, we discussed compliance, regulations, costs, but thinking now about the social implications and imagining a country, right, a nation that has already implemented a digital nomad visa, what would be the advantages of receiving these type of workers? What value added would these people bring in the new communities they will arrive in? What about any social possible risks they may trigger? I imagine you have assessed this topic, or maybe you have received some feedback from other countries that had already implemented this type of visa.
So basically, first of all, I feel like I need to stress this because always when we are talking about the digital nomad visa, people are thinking about other foreigners from third countries that come to said country that has the digital nomad visa, and they work there. But it's the other way, right? The people who are coming to your country are not working there. That's the whole idea. So basically, they will not be working. Let's say if we are going to pass the legislation in Romania, they're not going to be working for Romanian companies. They're going to be working.
Of course not.
For third country. So basically, one of the problems that we, and this goes to the risks. So one of the risks that we've assessed, and I've assessed with the Ministries of Internal Affairs and External Affairs, is the idea that when you don't have something that bounds the digital nomad to the Romanian, you don't have any anchor here. You don't have, let's say, a place that they own here. You don't have an employee here. You don't have anything, an employer here. You don't have any link outside the fact that they want to be traveling and living here. What happens when they want to use this instrument fraudulently, and they want to go to other countries, and let's say they take the digital nomad visa for one purpose, and then they end up using it for other purposes.
A different one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's that's manageable. That's the risk with all kinds of visas. There's not one type of visa that it's not open to this risk. The idea behind it is to have conditions, very straightforward conditions, and to be able to back check the people who want to come here with the digital nomad visa. And we've actually checked with other countries, and they've said to us, well, if you write the law well, it's not a higher risk with this visa than with any other one. And since, let's say, I've seen Greece has a very good story with this. They already have 3,000 applicants only this year.
Yeah.
And they've accepted 1,600 applicants already, and they are going through the next ones. I haven't seen until now any title of article, bombastic article, saying that someone used the digital nomad visa for other purposes.
Fraudulently, yeah.
Fraudulently, yes. And I feel like if we've seen countries who are already using this for, Estonia is using this, Croatia is already using this for 1 year, more than 1 year. And we haven't seen these cases. It's because the legislation works if you put very good conditions at the beginning.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Diana, very much. Taking a step back to the possible solutions available for employers looking to hire remotely. Matthew, did you ever have clients that needed to hire specialists, for example, in various countries without necessarily opening a branch there? And if you can share with us what legal route they chose.
Yeah, I would say we definitely use, there's two routes, and Simon can probably speak to this as well. You're looking at, and I think it's a long-term view, is it going to be an individual employee in that country and that's the only person that's going to be there? Or are you going to set up operations? Or are you going to sell? Or are you going to bring product to market? These are all considerations that we talk to our clients about when they're looking to use these visas or finding specialists. In most cases, we see that our clients, which are primarily tech-based very avid in adopting digital practices, are looking for the best talent they can find anywhere. We recently found a top 50 world data scientists in Greece from one of our clients. And we went the PEO route, Simon's solution. Sometimes it will involve, setting up an operation, but as Simon mentioned, that is usually a longer term play. It's 9, 12, 15 months out. What are you going to be doing? How many employees are you going to have there? I think the PEO option or the employer record of option is great for early stages and also small operations. At some point, maybe you graduate to a larger operating entity, but it's a great solution in the short term. And that's generally what we advise our clients on. You can probably get away with a Nomad visa for a year or two, but if you're really going to have any significant work or operation set up, the PEO solution is probably the best play in the short term, with potentially graduating to an operating entity in the long term. And that's what we're counseling most of our clients on right now, the risk involved with that process and using partners like Simon's organization.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Matthew. Trying to get more specific now, and I'm turning to Tanya. Let's say you find a great specialist somewhere in New Zealand, right? We're talking about only one person, and you have 5 other people in Egypt. Just examples. Would you use, Tanya, this EOR setup in those countries, or would you get registered with a branch, or would you register the company for the purpose of Social Security and income tax? What is the model that you would adopt?
Yeah, and I think Matthew talked to it really well. I think depends on what role they're in, marketing, sales, depends on, are we planning to continue a business expansion there? Like, is there other great talent? So we want to set up an entity. So I think it's one of those things where there's not one right answer. There are different ways to solve that. But we are continuing to grow globally as an organization and setting up new entities and stay tuned, but let's just say all around the world. So, and I think you'll see more and more companies move that direction as well. But yeah, Matthew said it really well. We follow exactly that process.
Excellent. Simon, would you say that, do you see any changes in using the EOR setup compared to 3 years ago, for example? Did the remote working trend or the pandemic change anything in this regard? Are there more companies choosing this option than before? If so, why do you think that is?
I think the awareness of the EOR model has become more mainstream now. There wasn't a choice before, or perhaps it went down a route that probably wasn't compliant or had a few question marks over it. And now, because we're more of a litigious society, the work anywhere movement following the pandemic, it's made companies look at this a lot more closely now. And when they realize they can do something quick, compliant, and get up to speed, and tick every single box that they need to, they embrace what we do. And as we were touching on earlier with Matthew and Tanya, we provide a roadmap from setting first steps into a country all the way up to setting your entity up and everything in between. But the most important thing about setting up in any country, as anyone will say on the call, I'm sure, is the talent. And having access to that global talent and making it borderless is an incredible opportunity that lots of companies are embracing.
Thank you. Getting back to Tanya and continue with another question from the compliance perspective, Tanya, the employer has legal obligations, duties, which involve costs. How did you accommodate these costs regarding compliance with employees working remotely?
So I think it's built in, like it's part of how we operate the business. And like to the comment I made earlier when Matthew was talking about individuals in the US who might be on a visa that's tied to location and they either want to work temporarily or permanently from a different state, then it's just part of the cost of how we operate our business. So I would say we've just absorbed those costs and we make the business aware. But I think back to the other comments that the panel has made, I mean, if you've got great talent, I want to say those costs are minimal and they're going to pay for themselves in the long run. And I think it's part of, again, the culture that we create as a company.
Excellent. Turning to Diana now, from all the countries that already adopted this visa, let's think in Europe, for example, but not necessarily, which one identified the best solution in your perspective, Diana? Which was the model you based your draft law on? What were the challenges they were faced with? If you can share some details with us, please.
We had to base our legislation on the European legislation because we also have European regulations regulating immigration and visas. So mostly the legislation that we had as a good example is from the European Union because that's the framework, the legal framework in which we are working. The model that I used is the Croatian one. It's that because it's one of the latest countries that adopted this digital nomad visa, and because it was one of the last ones, it also implemented a few changes based on the lessons that other countries had to learn, being the first ones.
The hard way. Yeah.
The hard way, yeah. But most of the countries, I would say, have the same conditions, the same general conditions. They say that you have to be working, you have to be a foreigner in a third country, you need to be employee, or you have to have a company registered in another country. You can also be, you don't need to actually be an employee, you can actually manage your company from another country. And the third condition, third general condition is the minimum wage, the limit wage for you to be able to be an applicant for this. And in most of the countries is around, in Europe, is around 3,000 euros per month. And this is, I've found that this is kind of the main limit, and we've also used this in Romania. And then there are a lot of basic conditions that you have, but let's say for Romanian, in my country's example, I kind of based the documents that were needed for other visas, and I just added the conditions for the specific conditions for the digital nomad visa, and I left the general ones there. So any other immigrant that would come here in Romania would always have to have, let's say, health insurance. Obviously, the digital nomad would also need to have a health insurance. So that's the thing. And I've actually had a few good talks with the embassies, and they were of immense help. They actually put me in face to face with the people who drafted the laws in their countries. Wow. And this is kind of amazing that we can connect in this way, and we can base our legislation, because even this legislation is something that would mostly benefit to all of us if it's kind of the same in all countries.
If synchronized, somehow synchronized.
It's more efficient this way for all of the countries to have similar laws in this aspect.
Yeah, were there any special challenges, any special obstacles that you remember your counterparts mentioning when they implemented this visa?
We've spoke about them. It's the taxation perspective, and like I said, the Croatian example is that they just canceled the whole discussion, the whole debate. They said that they will not tax any digital nomads. And then it's the idea of using this visa fraudulently and coming back to the conditions that you need to have in place for those digital nomads to come here in the first place.
I see. Thanks a lot, Diana. Thank you very much for the input. We're preparing to wrap up the session with two more questions for Matthew and Simon. Matthew, what would be the main risk in case of immigration non-compliance from your perspective related to remote working? And if these risks are covering only the employer or also the individual? And if you can just share with us a few examples.
Sure. There is significant risk in being out of compliance for immigration purposes. The Department of Labor in the United States can come get you. You can pay back wages. You can have your visas revoked. You can have your entire program put under the microscope after enough violations. I would say that those are waxing. They're gaining strength now as more government operations and agencies are back in good order, or at least working back to good order, getting restaffed. Internationally, it depends country by country, certainly on the compliance components, and it's a sort of an individual issue. But I think most often we see are individuals moving without, the most common thing we see is individuals moving, and sure Tanya can comment on this, and not telling their employer that they've moved abroad or to another country, and having to sort of backtrack and figure out, well, we're already out of compliance right now. What can we do to get back into compliance as quickly as possible? What can we do to establish good faith efforts to try to comply with the law, given that the pandemic and work from anywhere has really taken over a lot of businesses. And I think all of us on the compliance and HR, legal, are trying to catch up with either tools or processes or training or policies with organizations to try to prevent that. And I would expect over the next few years, as more governments pass these laws and there's more resources available, that compliance would continue to be a priority as the pandemic subsides. So right now, is there a great risk? I would say probably not for most of the visas, but in the next few years for sure. In the US, absolutely, there are definitely risks in being out of compliance. And we try to keep most of our clients out of that situation. Despite our best efforts, it happens.
Thank you, Matthew. Simon, I know you're offering global benefits administration services as well. Can we make a comparison between what employees wanted or received 3 years ago and what they want now in terms of benefits? Did the pandemic did the pandemic change the paradigm? Would you say the nomads, the digital nomads, the gig workers would care for the same type of benefits, or do they want something else?
I wish I bought shares in every global health cover company before the pandemic. I'd loaded. It seems to be on the table with every discussion, and we're lucky because we partner with most healthcare providers. So that if organisations have already got their own healthcare in place, we can implement that to their EOR contracts as they expand overseas. So when they make that transition, it's much easier for them. But it's whereas pre-pandemic, it was occasionally on the table. Now it's always on the table. And I think there's a hesitance certainly with the COVID situation, because heaven forbid any contraction of the disease or any new variant that comes out causes so many complications health-wise when you're in a foreign country, and that's exacerbated by being in a foreign territory and not having your family and friends around. And it's a worry, certainly. So they address it by making sure they're covered, and that exportation clauses in there so that they can be repatriated home in the event of any serious complications with health.
Super. I think that would wrap up this session. I'm really sorry about LinkedIn not being our friend today, but we'll be posting everything on LinkedIn, the whole discussion. It's a topic actually worth revisiting after a while. Next year, perhaps early next year, once more examples gather and we'll have more lessons learned. A big thank you to our expert panelists here for taking the time to join us, for the great insights they've shared. Thank you, Worldwide ERC, for being our partners in the session, and special thanks to all of you who managed to watch us and for being as well with us. In case you need further expert advice or you have any questions, please reach out to my guests directly. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help. Meanwhile, please follow our xpath Global pages on LinkedIn and YouTube to get updates on our new live event with hot topics in the global mobility sector. Goodbye and have a great evening, everybody.